BB for Hodier family. We are back today with another video with a topic that honestly gets us very upset. So just be prepared. This video is about ADOS FBA and why we feel like it is one of the most, what's the word? Counter-revolutionary, disrespectful, blasphemous to our nature as Africans. And we want to touch on it because we didn't realize that how many people follow the channel, or people that watch us that ADOS.
Right, to subscribe to the ADOS FBA.
Yeah, and we want to talk to those people specifically because if you are following us, you have some type of spiritual, you're searching for something, or you're on some type of journey more than likely, and we just want to help guide you and help you to understand the importance of narrowing down things that you're advocates for. And your life becomes a lot more simpler when you have things that one main thing that you're focused on, and not a bunch of things that you want, you know?
Right.
And I think ADOS is one of those things that ADOS FBA are one of those movements and things that people, it sounds good when you hear it, so it's like, why not? Why wouldn't I want that? But when you look at it from a spiritual level, which is what everything that we do, everything that we discuss is always have a spiritual element to it. You can't we're spiritual beings. So looking at things for face value is not going to serve you as an African. It's just not. Right. Even if you're black, you're still African. You may not think you are, but you're African. So you still have to look at things from spiritual levels. And when you don't do that, you fall victim into movements and following things that don't serve you. And just to let you know, before we became African centered, before we really started to understand who our enemies were and all that, we used to look at ADOS. We never necessarily called ourselves that, but we would follow some of the people and listen to their arguments and stuff, and we didn't think anything was wrong with it, you know? So I understand sometimes you just really may not know, and you have to hear it from somebody from people who analyze things on a spiritual level, and it makes it much more plain for you to be able to understand. So we're just going to give you some reasons, and stuff for And
quickly, I just want to preface what I agree with my wife said. We aren't making these criticisms from the perspective of someone unfamiliar with what ADOS is. As my wife said, we watched ADOS videos regularly, routinely, before we were African centered. And I would urge people who continue to subscribe to their kind of model of things to not fall under the spell of empiricism. And by that I mean, a lot of these movements, they're very well researched on the data, but they aren't operating from a spiritual base. And when your spiritual base is misaligned, everything that comes out of it is going to lead you into a dead end. And so one of the first points I wanted to make is FBA and ADOS are without solid psychological or spiritual foundation. Now, at a fundamental level, I think you can sense that they have no solid psychological or spiritual foundation in their name. There's a lot of power in what you call yourself. There should be a kind of sovereignty in our naming of things, because when we name things, we're also making announcements about the destiny of things.
And FBA as well. The name of FBA as well. So
So just let's quickly decode the name. So ADOS means American Descendants of Slavery. Now, we call ourselves Africans. So that means when we think about our origins and our roots, it doesn't begin on the plantations. It begins in the Nile Valley. It begins in the Happy Valley. It begins in Kemet. It begins in the place where agriculture was created. It begins in the place where astronomy and husbandry was innovated. this is where we should trace our origins. Why? Is it because we want to go on an ego trip? No, because when we look at Kemet, it shows the best of humanity. And that's what slavery was designed to destroy.
There's a reason why you don't know that Egypt's original name was Kemet.
The purpose of slavery, though it had economic profit, wasn't economic profit. The purpose of slavery was to make Africans forget that they're divine beings. It was to take God and make him inferior to man. That was the purpose of slavery. The purpose of slavery was to desacralize, to make less sacred the African. So the solution to slavery isn't economic. The solution to slavery is to what? To restore the sacredness of the African. And how do you restore the sacredness of the African? You remove the African from captivity. You put the African in an environment where they can commune with their ancestors, where they can commune with their creator, where they can manifest all of the things that made them so great when they were in Kemet. So when you're making your starting point in the naming of your organization, a descendant of slavery, that's a huge red flag that these are people who are not only without spiritual foundation, but they're psychologically and historically illiterate. They have no solid basis on which to build off of. And in the same vein, FBA, which stands for Foundational Black Americans, our foundations isn't America. Also, we aren't black. We're African.
Notice how neither one say African.
Neither one says African. And the reason,
they both got the letter A, but neither one of them.
And now we're getting into the political investment, because why do they meticulously stay away from the title African? Because when you claim yourself as an African, you're also denying your access to the check,
to the capital,
to the money,
which
to
is
the
what
capital.
you want.
And that's what a lot of these movements like ADOS and FBA represent. It represents this kind of commitment to capital above your creator.
And you can't have a commitment to capital and be committed to a spiritual connection to your ancestors.
It's one or the other. You either choose your creator or you choose the capital.
This is the thing. We living in America. We have this. You live in a society where you just have endless choices, and you can have all the choices at once. You go to get ice cream, and guess what? You can get every option topping you want. You don't have to choose. When Africans, you have to choose. You don't get to just be like, I want that one, and then I'm gonna put that on there. I'm gonna be ADOS and I'm FBA, and I'm gonna be pro-black, and I'm gonna be African centered, and then oh no, like you have to choose. And that's why we feel like this video is so important, because we see that people consider themselves African centered or calling themselves African, but then saying that they want reparations, and it's like, it's one or the other. Our identity, while it has political power, is not to be politicized. Meaning you can't take our honest identity and then distort it to meet some type of desire, some kind of economic desire that you want. And we're going to get into the economics and why that's such a blasphemous thing to do in the context of ransom money. But first I wanted to point out what I wrote in the foundations, and this deals with the aspect of foundations. And our foundations are ancestral, not geographical. The fear of Africa is the fear of death and a fear of the admission of our woundedness. I think when we admit that we're Africans, we're obligated to fight. Because once you understand that we're great and we're living in an environment that denies our greatness, now you have to fight for revolution. And we don't want to fight for revolution. We rather fight for assimilation. We want to assimilate ourselves into the American experience so that we can be a kind of African American of high status. But the African American of high status is a spiritually dead creature. It's a spiritually dead creature. You know, mixing an African with an American is like mixing oil and water. They don't go together. You know, they don't go together. They're incompatible. And there's a reason why, we can talk about names, there's a reason why they didn't call you an American African. Because they understood what the last thing you say is what you are. The last name is who you can... You calling yourself an American, the African, just throw that out.
Malcolm X. Why didn't Malcolm X out his first name? Why didn't he call himself X Little? Why did he call himself Malcolm X? Because he knew that the last name defined him. And in the same way, we talk about personal names, your last name defines you. When you name your organizations, what's at the end of it defines the organization. So what does that make ADOS?
Slavery and Americans.
What is slaveries and Americans? Slaves and Americans.
No.
And how can slaves and Americans bring about a revolution for Africans? Unless you think you're not an African. Then
now you're just waiting for a check.
Now you're waiting for a check.
See, Africans have to do stuff like put their families at stake and leave jail. You have to act. You have to teach. You have to do something. ADOS, FBA, they can sit back and be like,
hands out.
Hands out.
Yeah.
No guns up. Hands out.
And if the guns are up, they're for display. They are actually to be used against the enemies. You know.
They lie for the enemy.
So, number 2, never in history has an oppressed group that claims empowerment worn the name of their oppressors proudly. Mask wearing is an expression of cultural allegiance to America. That's about the COVID. As long as we see Africa as beyond redemption, America will be seen as within redemption, and vice versa. So, and this is specific to the climate we're in now.
Yeah.
We find these people who claim to be pro-black and on board with the progress of black Africans in the diaspora, but at the same time, in their daily behaviors, they're complying with all of these arbitrary guidelines and restrictions that their enemies are imposing upon them.
How are you pro-black and you're told to wear a mask by people who are pro-white and you do it?
And just think about this in
willfully
terms
do it.
And think about this in terms of metaphors. Black people before COVID was wearing masks in America because they're hiding their Africanness. So now you're just externalizing. So now you're just externalizing what you was already internally feeling, which is I don't want to be myself. And that's why I think it's so important that we show our faces.
Yes.
We have to show our phenotype.
No.
We have to show our African noses and our African lips in a captive environment. Why? Because it shows that we are resilient, that we're rebellious, that we have the spirit of leaders like Magufuli, who isn't cooperating with the COVID guidelines.
You know how many times he wore a mask? Once, when we had to get on the plane to come to Africa.
So part of your allegiance to your Africanness is shown through what rules you follow and what laws you look at as legitimate.
So you taking a mask and making it red, black, and green, there's a problem. It's still a mask.
It's still a mask.
No, absolutely not. Like,
so that means the flags, the name America, and the symbolism all must be abolished. And that goes for the people who put American flags in their emojis. That's not acceptable for an African to do.
Your profile literally could be confused with a Trump supporter. Y'all have the same flag in your bio.
It would be,
and you doing it just to convince other white people that you like them. That's really all it is.
It would be as if you went to a Jews page and you saw a swastika. Yes. You know, you saw the Nazi Germany flag. So and this is something Frances Cress Welsing, this is an exaggeration. She said, in the same way the Germans were the enemies of the Jews, the American is the enemy of the African. Okay? So if the American is the enemy of the African in the same way the Germans are the enemies of the Jews,
the flag is your enemy.
We should be looking at the flag. We should be triggered. We should be looking at the flag as something to be eradicated, something to be purged from our visual vocabulary.
I don't want to see it. I get mad.
You know.
How you not triggered? How you put it? I don't understand how you put it in your bio. Like,
yes. And don't make the American flag red, black, and green either.
No.
Get the actual red, black, and green flag.
Abolish it.
The one that Garvey flew. Get that flag.
Like.
So we must kind of get out of this symbolic too commitment. Because again, if you're a spiritual being, you understand the powers of symbols and you don't take them lightly. So when you use words like American and you see American flags, this should be cause for concern. This should be the time when we put our arms up and get defensive because we know we're being threatened by an evil presence. And that's what America represents. It's not just politically against us. It's an evil presence.
An evil presence.
And slavery wasn't a brutal economic institution, as it was stated on the ADOS website.
They did say that.
Slavery was a project of spiritual and physical genocide against African people. Only, exclusively.
Don't bring nobody else into this. Only Africans.
You know, and another thing on the ADOS website that was stated was cause for concern is they said they wanted to move the discussion away from melanin. Okay, so now if anybody's ever read Frances Cress Welsing, that's just blasphemous.
It is.
Because melanin isn't just something you see. We have melanin in our brain.
In our eyes.
Yes.
In our ears. We hear differently than people without melanin. We see differently.
Melanin is that enabling ingredient that gives us our divinity.
Yes.
That gives us our communication with the immaterial.
Without a pineal gland,
we're Urugu. With the calcified pineal, we're Urugu. So when you say you're moving the discussion away from melanin, what I hear is you're moving the discussion away from our African origins. We're moving the discussion away from an honest evaluation of who we really are.
And we want to be considered as white.
Right. And what we're saying is, if that's the cost for you to get reparations, we don't want it. We don't want it because we value our creator more than we value the riches of our enemies.
Really what this is showing is the lack of self-love amongst African people in America is much deeper than we thought. When you can say these names, call yourself these things, put American flags in your emojis, and think nothing of it.
And this brings us to point number 3, which is FBA and ADOS lacks spiritual credibility, even if their goals were fulfilled, as it represents ransom money. And then I put in parentheses the book of Numbers. So this is something we talked about in the other video, and that's the Avenger of Blood doctrine. And this is in the book of Numbers, and it's in the lost books of the Bible. But the idea is, if someone gets killed within a certain area or environment, that killer would have to immediately go into exile, because what the idea is, when that murder is committed, he's poisoned the land, and that killer cannot return to the environment where the murder was committed until the person who's in office vacates his seat. But if that person so happened to return to the site of the killing before the governor leaves office, then the Avenger of Blood has the legal right to take that person's life, to depollute the land. And what we're saying, and also they said, nobody can take ransom money in exchange for the killer to return to the site of the killing. So what is reparations? Reparations is Africans in America saying, we are willing to live in the presence of the killers of our ancestors as long as you give us money.
Pay us.
We are willing to live on a polluted landmass as long as we can materially prosper in the present.
And what we're saying is, biblically, and let's even put the Bible aside, on a spiritual level, if you believe in Yahweh, if you believe in Olodumare, he is telling us that you are not supposed to take money from people who have committed. If you kill his children, how dare you say, all right, I'm gonna step in for God. I know that's dad over there, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, you can pay me directly. Don't worry about him. He gonna be fine. Like, how dare you? These are God's children that are being killed. That were killed, should I say, because we're talking about slavery right now. These are God's children who are being killed. How dare you come and say, don't worry about none of that. Just pay me and we good. What?
And that's why, and my wife was talking about this case with Breonna Taylor, where her family accepted money, and it elicited a lot of criticism, which it should have, because they shouldn't have taken the money. But nobody made the connection as to how the behavior of her family was identical to the behavior of Africans in the diaspora asking for reparations.
Please let me know what the difference is.
What is the difference? In fact, I would make the argument that it's worse in Africa's asking for reparations, because they're saying they'll take money for genocide, whereas Breonna Taylor is one individual. one individual.
And
the principle is the same. So we're making a statement on the basis of principle.
Right.
Regardless of the scale of the killing, the principle that you should take money in exchange for the murder of somebody is fundamentally anti-African and demonic. And why is it demonic? Because it's yielding to the power of Urugu. And anything that yields to the power of Urugu is in service of evil.
Anything that says you don't have to die for what you did. You kill, steal, and destroy, but all you got to do is pay me. Huh? Are you... Wait. And you know what they do? They can't understand what's wrong with y'all.
Yes.
They really cannot. I know for a fact white people sit at home and you cracking up, either just dumb confused, like, how are these people not killing us?
Yes.
And the other ones are laughing, like, if this was us, all y'all would have been dead.
It's almost like, and I've been playing chess a lot, it's like, imagine if you had a king, you could, your next move, you could have easily put the king in checkmate, but you just continuously just move your pawns. Like, but all you have to do is make one move, and you can put the king in check. But you don't do it because you're too afraid of what's going to happen.
And the king
is like, does this person even understand the rules of the game? Like, the white king is just sitting there, just waiting for us to check them, and we
won't do it.
Let's just move this pawn one square.
This is what we doing.
Incrementalism. Being defensive, and that's another chess principle. They say in chess, the attacking pieces are more valuable than the defending pieces. So you can have two bishops, one is attacking and one is defending. The one that's attacking is more valuable. We haven't learned the art of attacking our enemies.
We want to love them.
We just want to love
and forgive
and defend
them
ourselves.
And let them pay us for killing and stealing and destroying from our people.
Yes.
Come on, y'all. Like, this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to consider yourself ADOS or FBA. It is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And you are showing that you don't love African people. You don't even love yourself. But you want to get paid, and you want to stay in the country, the poisonous country that's paying you. Y'all not gonna leave America with that money. You're gonna invest it.
Our doctrine,
you're gonna buy land on the poisonous ground where your ancestors' blood was spilled.
Living amongst the polluters.
Happily living amongst the polluters is
surrounded by the fumes and the filth, and you're just pretending as if the smell isn't there. And that's one of the essence of depression, by the way.
Yes.
Like depressed people, their hygiene deteriorates rapidly, and they can sit in their own filth and they don't even smell it. And then somebody else walks in, they go, "Wow, when's the last time you took a shower?" And you're like, "What are you talking about?" And that's Africans within America. You've been sitting in the filth of your enemy for centuries,
so long.
And we're in Africa, and we're like, how do they not smell this rancid, sour, decomposed smell of this demonic entity called America? And y'all walking around like, where our check at? We gonna get our money. And we like, what money? Get out of there. It's filthy. It's destroying you. It's filthy. It's for animals. Like, the government of America is run by animals. Literally. On animals on two legs. Like Khalid Muhammad, he called them two-legged beasts. Two-legged beasts. That debate you're watching, that's not a debate. That's the European duel.
That's dogs.
Duel, ordeals, and oaths. That's how they solve things.
That is exactly how they solve things.
They don't, and that's a contribution from our master teacher, Nana, Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan.
Yeah.
Oaths, ordeals, and duels. That's how Europeans solve their disputes.
You think they actually care about court?
This is all power play.
And doing it the legal way.
Within their rules. We have to abandon the rule book that they gave us and start following the African rule book. Because as long as we're playing by their rules, we'll be under their dominion.
They don't even play by their rules. They kill, steal, and destroy and live their happy white lives. They don't even play by the rules, but you do. How?
Our doctrine should be repatriation and retaliation. I used to say or.
Yeah.
It's not both. Or. It's repatriation and retaliation.
But the first step
is repatriation.
Because you can't fight them on their own land. You have to be in the land of your ancestors where you outnumber them.
Right.
That's just common sense. Like, why would you be?
Right.
You can't fight them there.
You want to attack your enemy from a vantage point where you're protected.
Yes.
Because if you're attacking them on their side of the chessboard, they just gonna move their knight. You gone. But if you surround your pieces with some protection, now you have a vantage point where you can attack them and they can't attack you.
It's a much better fighting chance.
This is not running. This is not running. This is elementary war science. And we've kind of abandoned the idea that we're at war, so we think we can negotiate with our enemies. And this is the thing.
Sit at the table and talk.
Your Rugus are master negotiators.
You'll never win.
Master manipulators, I should say. Not negotiators, but master manipulators. And they have to be master manipulators because they're recessive. They don't know how to fight. They know how to deceive. And they know this. So their comparative advantage is to deceive you into thinking you have less power than you actually have.
And they've done a great job.
And they've done a spectacular job.
ADOS, FBA, haven't they done a great job?
So, the next point, number 4, advocates of reparations love capital more than their ancestors. Commercialization is a sign of emptiness. Hustle mentality is from our enemies, and this spirituality produces material power. Actual spirituality produces a material power that cannot be given to us by man.
Right.
So a lot of times, because we don't really understand what the African worldview is, when we say spirituality, we think meditation, incense, doing yoga. But no, spirituality also leads to material power in the sense that once you release yourself from enslavement to material, then the Creator says, I can trust you with material.
You now.
I can trust you with this material because when I give it to you, you aren't going to worship it. You aren't going to turn it into an idol. And that's what America has done to us. America has turned us into idolaters. But if we were spiritually rooted, the Creator would look at us and He says, you've been loyal to me, and I know you love me so much. I could give you the materials, and you're going to use it for your liberation.
For the liberation of my people.
And the liberation of my children. But because African people in America, at least, have been so disloyal to their Creator, that they've committed so much treason against their ancestors,
Christians
the Creator looks at you all and says, y'all ain't trustworthy. So I'm not going to give y'all reparations. I'm not going to give y'all ransom money. Is it because I hate y'all? No, because if I give y'all the ransom money, what you going to do with it? You're going to give it back to your enemies.
You're going to give it right back.
You ain't going to use that ransom money to resettle in the land of your ancestors and build an African empire, an African kingdom. You ain't going to do that.
The way it was before.
The way it was before.
Put the world back in its rightful order. You ain't going to use it for that.
And not an empire, because I don't want people to get it confused. Not an empire of exploitation. And I don't even like the word empire because it sounds too European. We can build an African village, a world village.
Put the world back where it was supposed to be.
Put the world back in balance.
Right.
Restore Ma'at and eliminate Esfit. That's what America is. Esfit. Leave it. Leave it. The Creator He's found us untrustworthy.
Untrustworthy. The most untrustworthy people when it comes to money. We will do anything for that.
We call ourselves divine for a reason. And it is an insult to God to be divine and ask your enemies for favors. Like we just have a high opinion of ourselves.
No.
This is a descriptive term. It's not an opinion.
You're divine as well. If you're an African, you're divine as well. It's not just us.
And how do we know we're divine? Because we know our history. Because we study.
And we know their history as well.
Because
you compare the two.
Yes. We know that Egyptology was a lie. We know that, the African pineal gland is the source of all creativity. We know that. And we've studied enough to see it in scientific detail. Now, if you believe these things, then it would show in how you interact with your enemies. Now, if you're interacting with your enemies and asking them for favors, you're saying that you don't have everything within. Because that's one of the elements of godliness. God is self-sufficient.
You don't need anything.
God is infinitely abundant. all-encompassing.
You can give me nothing.
Omnipresent, omnipotent. Okay? Now, does that mean we as human individuals are omnipotent and omnipresent? No. But we have a divine core that enables us to defy man.
Right.
We're not subject to the same rules and restrictions as our enemies.
Spiritual beings.
And once we understand that, we will dispose of all of these fictions about Americanness, about the American dream, about reparations, begging for ransom money, protesting, looting, voting. You know, this whole vote thing. Like, if anybody in America who's an African is voting, they're putting their hat in the ring of their enemies.
We can't help.
They're the black chess piece that painted itself white. That's what they're doing.
And they want to believe so much in the system. They want to believe, they have to tell themselves their vote counts. And there's some people that say, even if it don't count, it don't matter. I still, I can't. What can we do?
Yes.
Like, if you believe, if you gonna stand in line in a white man's entity and think that you can vote between two evil beings, two of the same people.
I just thought of an interesting idea. I mean, this can't be evaluated, but it's just a very interesting thought. How many white people you think vote in African elections? But this is the thing. It's white people living on the continent in Africa. You see them. You go to the grocery store. Here. It's Urugus. It's Urugus galore.
Yeah.
So it's Urugus everywhere. But I'm genuinely curious. Are those Urugus who are in Tanzania, are they voting? No. But at the same time, they're not voting. They're dominating in terms of the economic structure of the country.
Right.
So what
you're doing neither.
You're doing neither. So I'm saying if they're engaged in this power contest and they're not voting, I have to ask, what are you doing to engage in the power contest? Voting isn't a part of it. And group economics within the prison isn't part of it either. Because all you're going to do is get very highly paid inmates. That's what you're going to get from group economics within the prison. What you need to do is exit the prison and then affiliate yourselves with other Africans and then develop a counter strategy where you can destroy your enemies. Become the attacking chess piece instead of the defensive chess piece.
Yeah, you're always on the defense. Why is that?
Number 5.
Lastly, number 5, FBA ADOS is a reflection of the ignorance of history. Meaning we haven't studied anything.
Yeah.
We just think that black is just a movement and that we learned a couple things about our ancestors and that they were slaves and that, oh wow, we can get money for them being slaves. Let's capitalize and figure out how we can market and have these discussions and these conferences about how we can find ways to get paid. And you haven't studied. You haven't
studied. And it's 2 points I want to make. And I think you have to put stuff very simple, because I think part of the reason we get trapped in these psychological straitjackets that Urugu puts on us is we fail to look at reality through the eyes of our ancestors. And when you begin, and the way you do that is through history. And when you look at reality through the eyes of your ancestors, the solutions not only become apparent, but they're simple. Kind of shockingly simple and clear.
Yeah.
So I wrote down, I said, the problem of slavery wasn't that the slaves weren't compensated. The problem of slavery was that they were slaves. And what do I mean by that? So just put yourself in the shoes of one of your ancestors who was enslaved.
Just for a second.
Do you think when they went to bed at night, the rebellious ones at least, they was dreaming of getting paid by massa? Or do you think they was dreaming of slitting master's throat and leaving the plantation?
Do you think they was dreaming up of the beautiful house and all the things
living in master's house and sleeping with master's wife and playing with master's kids?
And sending them to master's schools?
No. The rebellious slave was praying and dreaming about slitting master's throat and leaving the plantation.
And when he woke up and he realized it wasn't a reality, he was devastated.
And this is the thing. Whenever we aspire to things that are inconsistent with the dream of our ancestor, we're betraying our ancestors.
We're not honoring them.
We're not honoring them.
They're on your T-shirts. You're saying their names, and they're like this. Because you're walking around with your hands out. You're not hearing from your ancestors. Stop saying that. You're not hearing from them. They're not telling you to ask for reparations. They didn't want that.
So what?
I want what they wanted, which was freedom, and I want the killers of my ancestors to also meet the same fate as them.
Yes, an eye for an eye. That's biblical.
I didn't say anything about money. I didn't say anything about capital. I didn't say anything about land. I don't want a mule.
Yes.
I don't want any animals. I don't want none of that. Keep it. I don't want your land, your polluted, disgusting, blood-wrenched land. Keep it. Give me your life. Can you do that?
And notice, they're not going to give you their life.
No,
you
they
have
will
to
not.
take their life. So, then that's the essential point we're making. Any power you want to accumulate, you have to take it. They aren't going to give it to you because the person giving you the power, by definition, has more power. Because if they can give it to you, that means they're in a superior position. They can take it away.
It's not even really yours.
So it's 2 more points. I put, when we discuss our suffering economically, we are disrespecting our ancestors.
Yes.
Only thing Yurugu owes us are their lives, and anything less than that is a way to avoid giving us their lives.
Blasphemy.
And then I said, when we negotiate for reparations, we are negotiating our African identity, not monetary or any other form of compensation. So we think when we're negotiating for reparations, we're acting on behalf of our ancestors. No, we're trying to wiggle our way out of our African self. We're trying to see if we can maneuver our way in such a fashion that when Yurugu looks at us, he doesn't see an African anymore.
How can I be melanin and get paid?
Yes.
How can I use my skin to get paid?
So
how can I use it to my advantage?
And this is why it's so idiotic to invoke.
That's a great word.
This is why it's so idiotic to invoke the history of the Japanese and the Jews as justification for African reparations. Why? Does that mean Africans are less worthy?
Reasons.
Does that mean that Africans are less worthy than Jews and Japanese? No. That means the Jews and the Japanese took the ransom money because they aren't divine like Africans.
They're Yurugu.
They're Yurugu. Even the Japanese are Yurugu. Yes. So and also on top of that, we have to understand that when the Japanese and the Jews got the reparations, it was in the context of nationhood.
They had a nation to claim.
So the Japanese could appeal to Japan to lobby on their behalf to force America to give them reparations.
Right.
The Jews were in the process of forming Israel, which they then took that reparation monies and poured it into Israel.
It into there. Where are you going to pour yours into, guys?
You're going to pour it back into the pockets of your enemy.
Oh, wow. You have no nation to claim. Your name has slavery and American at the end.
So what kind of reparations project, even if we suspend the spiritual thing that we're talking about, makes any type of logical sense where you have no nationhood in which to contextualize it?
White people are laughing at you.
What we're doing right now is engaging in a very extravagant form of self-hate. A form of self-hate that has never been known to the world. A kind of pathological self-hate. A self-hate that is just almost congenital, that you pass it down from generation to generation.
Yes.
And the only way you can break it is through force. It's almost as if it's like when you look at Africans in America today, you got to drag them to Africa in the same way they was dragged from Africa to America.
Yeah.
You got to like chloroform them.
When you start seeing them putting the American flag in their bio, it's just like, okay, yeah, they won. Yurugus have won on a psychological level against black people. When you start seeing them not being triggered by seeing the American flag and calling themselves Americans proudly and asking the oppressor for money for killing. You're not asking for money for something being taken like land. You asking for the lives of the children. They were feeding our children to alligators, kicking our babies' heads off, burying them into the ground, kicking our babies' heads off with their feet.
Cutting the stomachs of pregnant women open so the unborn infant falls out, and then they stump the infant to death under their boot.
Raping men in front of African women and in front of their children.
So that the adrenaline rush of fear gets into the unborn fetus, so that it's born with the same fear that she felt watching her man be raped.
They wasn't brushing their teeth so much. They was taking the teeth of our African people and taking them out of the African mouths and putting them in theirs.
And you know who did that? The man on your beloved $1 bill, George Washington.
The dollar bill you want so much.
Why?
You know why he ain't smiling?
Because he has the teeth of his ancestors, of your ancestors,
in his
mouth.
damn mouth. How dare you? Like, these are not humans. We are not dealing with people with the same spiritual background as us. And here you are begging and pleading, waiting and dociling your way into getting reparations. And guess what? You still won't get it. They have no incentive to give you reparations. Why would they? You ain't doing nothing if you don't get it. I said this before. What are you going to do if you don't get it? Protest?
And we should be thankful. I mean, if you think about it, because this stuff sounds counterintuitive,
yeah.
But we should be thankful that Urugu hasn't done it yet. Because if Urugu did give us reparations, that would solidify our position in the company of the condemned.
Yeah, then God couldn't even come in and...
Because he's like, you took the ransom money, so now you're going to be visited with my wrath, just like my enemies.
Yes, now you have to suffer with the people who you took the money from, because you idolize, you put the money above me. Good job, but go ahead. Now I can't even come in and save you now.
So don't get it confused. We aren't saying Africans shouldn't ask for reparations because they're unworthy of it. We're saying we're worth more.
You can't pay me. You can't pay my ancestors. You can't pay us enough for what you did.
We can be paid in blood.
I would love to take that.
We don't take money orders. We don't take credit.
Western Union.
We don't take debit.
Direct deposit.
We don't take world remit.
M-Pesa.
We don't take M-Pesa.
No.
Blood.
Period.
That's the only form of currency we take when it comes to our ancestors.
And you tell Urugus that, and guess what they'll say?
Nothing.
War.
Yes.
Now it's war, and y'all don't want that. Y'all don't want it. You want them to love you.
Anything to make Urugu put his gun back in his holster.
Yeah, anything to give him that security that you're just that one black person that isn't gonna say what we're saying.
So develop a kind of passionate hatred of Urugu and a passionate love of your ancestors and yourself and African people.
Right.
When you have that love of African people, you won't fall prey to every manipulative tactic that promise you material reward.
Right.
Because your investments are spiritual and not material.
Yes, and you won't be looking to what other groups of people did, like the Jews and the Japanese. You won't be looking to them and say, well, they did it, I can do what they did. No, you won't, because you'll understand that you're African. And you'll understand that what works for people that aren't Africans doesn't work for Africans.
Exactly. So
don't look to other people as your God. Look to Yahweh.
Exactly. So that pretty much captures
our
feelings about these movements that are positioning us in a very defensive position, and disempowering us and robbing us of the greatness that is innate. And until we recognize that innate greatness, we will continue to live in this cycle of protest and suffer and cry and repeat and die. So African people, we need you all
so much
to abandon all of the lies, embrace the truth, and begin to diagnose the illness that you're suffering from, and act to heal yourself of these illnesses. Because if you don't heal yourself, then you're basically admitting defeat. You're forfeiting. You're resigning before the war has even started. So,
and we just want to see us. We want to see us utilize our energy in the right way. We want to see us have one goal, and not, like I said in the beginning, all these different things that we want. We want to go to Africa and we want reparations, and then we want pro-black stuff, and then one goal: liberation of African people.
And the first liberation is mental, and then geographical. Meaning, free yourself from the American psychology and free yourself from the American landmass. And then we can start negotiating. Okay, now what is our political formation going to be?
Then you can. But if you're in prison, you can't even.
Yeah.
You got too much stuff going
prison
on.
politics.
No.
Get out of prison.
Yeah.
Get out of prison.
Get
This
out.
is prison politics.
Yeah.
All politics in America is prison politics. I don't care if you African centered even.
Yeah.
If the goal or the destiny doesn't go to Africa, it's prison politics. We're done with prison politics. Liberation politics only. That means politics from a position outside of our enemy's jurisdiction. If we have to defer to our enemies for anything,
it's a problem.
We're politically void.
You did it
We're
wrong.
Politically disempowered. We did it wrong.
Something went wrong, and let's figure out what that something is. Same thing if they're praising you. If these white people are reposting ADOS, FBA stuff, there's something wrong. You did something wrong if they're advocating for you to get
celebrities, because celebrities are just agents of the white society.
Yeah. So we hope that this sheds some light on this topic. Like I said, this is a very difficult topic for us to talk about because it makes us so upset to see and hear our African people utilizing their energy towards something of this spiritually just empty process or entity, whatever you want to call it. So we just hope that this sheds some light and helped our people to understand what they should be focusing on and what they shouldn't be. And we thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in our next video.
All right. Love you guys.
Kwaheri.
Kwaheri.